We are back with the balance breakdown, and we have an unbalanced show today as we've dragged Shawnee down here, came in for a quick chat before we got recorded, and now he's here to stay. We roped him in, we honey-dicked him, whatever you like to call it, and we're going to discuss an action-packed UFC 292 card from Boston, Massachusetts, the TD Gardens, where Sean O'Malley took home the bantamweight title. The Suga era has begun. Zhang Weili took out Amanda Lemos by decision in the co-main event, and Garry went and put on a very dominating display against Neil Magny as well. We're going to talk about all those three fights in detail. We're going to cover the rest of the card as well. Let's get straight into it, and let's not waste any time. The card as a whole, we like to kind of do a little bit of rundown. I'll go to Harry first, just a quick rundown on the card, and we'll go straight into the main event. What did you think of the card as a whole, Harry? Obviously, you watched it back the next day, as you do. I watched it live. I feel it was a good card overall. I think, what happened in the main event might kind of put that little special touch on it. I think it was a card that was in danger of a little bit fizzling out a little bit, perhaps, but we got the magic of the KO in the main event. Harry, your thoughts on the card as a whole?
I loved it. I think the unexpected happened in the main event, right? And I don't mean unexpected as in, nobody expected it to happen. We didn't think it could happen, whatever. We obviously all picked Aljamain Sterling pretty uniformly, but it was a shocking moment, right? And those are things that especially in title fights, that we really, really enjoy seeing. And you know me, I'm always somebody that wants to see technical mastery, and Weili Zhang absolutely gave us 5 rounds of just that. And so I'm always down for that. Garry, an incredibly, incredibly dominant performance. Some polarizing moments that I'm sure we'll talk about. But in terms of the skills on the night, I mean, that's the best performance to date. And I think he's played his professional career inside the cage about as perfectly. And, we'll get into that and I'll give my thoughts on that. Bautista Blackshear was an absolute fantastic fight. Both fighters far better than what their current rankings are, and I think I'm excited to see those both back. And we moved on to Vera and Munhoz, and I thought that was a banger of a fight as well. So up and down, some really, really good fights, some really, really interesting results. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed the card. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, as the line. Let's talk about the main event straight away. Look at the big question and Sean did mention it on the big podcast as well. We'll give ourselves a little bit of a tap on the back and maybe to the audience as well. If you like what you're hearing here, and the same with the preview show that I'll mention as well, give us an old like, give us an old subscribe. We do appreciate the support. But the main event as a whole, I thought we did a pretty good job in covering it from all angles on the preview show. And, some of the main points that we discussed were some of the things that we seen inside the cage on Saturday night. And I'll go to Harry first straight away, just about the matchups itself. Obviously we were labeling it as a classic striker versus grappler, but there were so many more intricacies involved in what needed to be done in there to get the win. And obviously we talked about the forward pressure. We talked about, footwork, lateral movement, and it was Sean O'Malley who won all of those battles en route to knocking out Aljamain Sterling in the second round. And I mean, a masterful performance of footwork, distance control, and takedown defense in certain ways with Sean O'Malley, who just patience for me was the biggest kind of thing that won the fight for Sean O'Malley, was not overcommitting on shots, where he won the patience battle with Aljamain Sterling, where Aljo kind of got a little bit impatient at the start of the second round, and we've seen what happened there. He walked straight on into a right hand, and the rest is history. Harry, your thoughts on the overall landscape of the fight, first of all, and how it went, and the expectations you had before the fight based off what you've seen on the fight night itself as well.
So I think that there's an element of one fighter underestimating the other just a little, and one fighter overestimating the other just a little. I feel like Aljamain Sterling thought he would be able to get to the grappling positions far easier than he actually could in the fight. And then I think Sean O'Malley expected Aljamain Sterling to be far stronger. And I don't mean stronger as in physically, but stronger as in his ability to find those grappling exchanges. In the post-fight press conference, I think, or in the interview in the cage, I don't fucking remember, whatever. Sean said something that was incredibly telling. And it was that the game plan was get out the first round and don't get taken down. That to me tells you exactly what he thought about Aljamain Sterling's grappling, that he really, really put it on a pedestal and really, really focused on it in the game plan. He then, I think in the first round, did an excellent job of constantly switching stances, constantly having something that threatened Aljamain Sterling. So there was a couple of feints that I noticed immediately. Like he does the same feint that Izzy does, where he pops his back hip, and that's all obviously threatening a low kick, a side kick, a high kick, whatever it is. He showed Aljamain a knee. He was showing Aljamain a back uppercut. And so Aljamain had this sort of really difficult thing to try and traverse, which was he wanted to try and close Sean O'Malley down, cut the cage off, but O'Malley continued to switch stances. So how you cut the cage off changes depending on whether you're orthodox or southpaw, because the weapons that are coming at you and the weapons that you can throw are obviously different. And so Aljamain had to consistently switch up for that. That meant he couldn't then commit to any shots. If you can't commit to any shots, you're not going to be shooting naked takedowns without at least forcing some form of footwork battle. And so I think you're absolutely right with the term patience, because Aljamain got to a point, and we saw it in the last 30 seconds of the first round. He was like, fuck it, I'm just going to go for him. And when he did go for him and he got O'Malley to the cage, we saw a little bit of grappling, right? And O'Malley did a great job at stuffing the takedowns. That was fine. But it was Aljamain having a fuck it moment, I couldn't get close to this guy. I've landed a couple of leg kicks. He's leg kicked me, but nothing has happened this entire round. I've not been able to implement what I want. And it did feel to me that Aljamain came out a little bit erratic. Now, obviously in the second round, we got what we got, right? And Sean O'Malley hits a wonderful mid-teep. And as he's doing so, notice that he takes his leg back and switches stance, because he's inviting Aljamain to step into the space he just created. If he teeped him and did what Dustin Poirier does and just marauded forward, like switch hitting forward, then Aljamain would probably enter on a takedown, right? Look for a single leg or something similar. But because Sean baited the open space, Aljamain gobbled that space up. The right hand is what it is, and we are where we are. But I feel
if we can, if you're finished on the, we'll cover it all together. We'll cover the first round first. We can talk about the finish then a little bit later on. You know, the work and the mention that you mentioned the feints there as well, which were another big part. And you know, he was showing a lot, Shawnee. O'Malley to Sean Sheehan. I'll go Sean O'Malley to Sean O'Sheen here. Maybe I made a mistake in bringing you on when we have Sugar Sean Sheehan and Sugar Sean O'Malley to talk about. But is the feints itself, Sean? You know, you can feint, but you know the importance of getting someone to bite on those feints is very important if you want actually your feint game to work. And Aljamain Sterling was biting on a lot of those feints very early days, and I guess we spoke about, you know, who was the person who was going to fight on the front foot. And you had mentioned yourself that Aljamain wasn't as effective fighting forward as he was backwards. And Sean O'Malley very bravely and excellently allowed Aljamain Sterling to kind of come in and fight on the front foot, and it ultimately cost him in the end. But he did it so much so in the first round too, which kind of led to the finish in the second round.
100%, and that all goes to Harry's point as well, that you know, Aljamain kind of underestimated him a bit. He probably didn't think he had the ability to do that to him. But like, if you listened to the previous show last week, you probably would have heard that was a clear path to victory that we talked about. But like, as we said in the previous show as well, though, like, it's a path to victory that's very brave, I would say.
It takes a fair set of balls to do that, to be honest.
You have to pick your moments. And even if you do pick your moments, right? You're only going to have a few moments in that 25 minutes to actually do that. And it may have been the first moment he got, and he took it, you know, because there really wasn't one in the first round. Now, you said you wanted to talk about the first round. I thought it was very interesting, obviously, because Aljamain Sterling won the first round, I think, on all three judges' cards. But like, he won the battle, but he lost the war type of thing, you know. From straight away, what the feints do is two things, right? The feints stop you from coming in to a certain point, but they also make you wary about landing a shot, right? So they're stopping your offense, right? And then they're making you defend as well.
Yeah.
That's the problem, right? When that occurs, right? You're getting like there's someone in front of you with a gun, there's someone behind you with a gun. Like, where do you go? You have to do something desperate. And that's what he ended up doing in the end. But what I thought was brilliant as well, right? Aljamain did find ways in, right? Maybe he had to come through the fire, or he didn't bite in the fence, but he came in. But what O'Malley did off the back foot was brilliant. And we spoke about that last week as well. Harry already mentioned the teeps when which off of for the finish, but all the first 3 minutes of the fight, there was probably 5 to 6 straight leg kicks or straight body kicks, teeps right up through the middle from Aljamain Sterling, from Sean O'Malley. And why is that the case, right? Why is that? Well, that's because he was pushing him against the cage and he broke off the cage every single time. He couldn't take him down in the middle of the cage. He couldn't take him down against the cage because he couldn't get him against the cage because of the fence forced him to stop attacking and defending. And when he did attack, the teeps that came through the middle pushed him away again. After that,
I also thought O'Malley's lateral movement as well when Sterling was trying to push forward was very good too, and his awareness of where he needed to be in the cage was excellent. I mean, like I can't fucking say enough good things about Sean O'Malley. We have all this wonder, and we all had all this wonder before the fight, but we fucking know exactly what we're dealing with right now, and a very high level individual, especially on the feet, Johnny.
Yeah, 100%. Without a shadow of a doubt. Like, people might think, how is this fight won? Was it like, obviously every fight is won with a bit of skill and with a bit of athleticism and everything like that. But this fight was won with tactics, like 95%. I truly believe that. Like, the very start of the fight to the very end of the fight was all to set up how the fight ended. Like, the whole thing. It was clear. And like, if you want to say, oh, it's easy, we literally said that beforehand. Like, we literally picked this out as an exact way the fight could end. No, we weren't sure if it would happen or if it could happen. But when it did happen, like, that must be brilliant, because it's like, if fucking the three of us can say it, before a fight, it's not exactly the rocket of the rocket science. So they can definitely pick it out. But to be able to actually produce that is brilliant. And just one thing as well, right? We constantly talk about fighting out from the cage against good wrestlers. But how many times do people actually do it? Like, how many times do those great strikers actually beat great wrestlers? Like, very, very, very rarely. And if you do it with a tactical, like this, I love this, right? I love this, because this is what I always talk about. Like, if you truly believe in the technical aspect and you can tactically get it right, you will win every single time. Every time. If you have the ability to do it, you can absolutely go out and do it. You need that belief. You need that ability. You need the tactics. If you have all that, why not? Why can't you do it? And Sean O'Malley, I think, proved that. But the end of the fight, like, was just perfect, because everything rolled into one. Everything rolled into, like, okay, you're Aljamain Sterling. You're thinking about, right, I can't push him against the cage. I can't take him down in the middle of the cage. I'm not landing any shots. I'm going to have to do something here. I'm going to have to put the pressure on. And what does O'Malley want? An inferior striker putting the pressure on, wailing in, going wide open. Manna from heaven for him. Just, it was, he fought 7 minutes of a tough fight, or a little bit less, for an easy finish. Set him up. Do you know what it was like, right? You go fishing and you get your bait, you get it all ready, and you throw it out, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning, you're sitting there and you have your can of harp, maybe you have, you bring your little ham sandwich with you and stuff. And at about 9 o'clock, you see this little, you've been waiting for it for 2 hours, and then there's a touch in the rod, and you pull the rod up, and next thing, the fucking fish. That was it. That was this. He waited and waited and waited. There was a bite. And then you were eating supper that night.
He absolutely did. Turning patience into panic. That's the way I would kind of label it as well. And Sean O'Malley did an excellent job. Harry, talk me through the finish itself. Aljamain inserted himself, moved forward, trying to push back Sean O'Malley against the cage. Made a big mistake in Acho Nono, going into the pocket, leaving himself wide open, just throwing a raw, naked shot. Step back, right hook counter, down, beginning and the end. Talk me through what you've seen through the finishing sequence, Harry.
Sure. I mean, you've basically just covered the whole thing. But what I would say, the thing that was impressive to me was when Aljamain Sterling hits the mat, right? What Sean O'Malley does after that is he's crowding over him, but he's spinning about 3 plates at one time, right? He needs to make sure he's landing damage, and he's doing so with those hammer fists. He needs to make sure that he's not going to get up kicked, because to begin with, Aljamain Sterling's on his back and he's trying to bring knees to chest and arms to face and all this sort of stuff. So he's spinning that plate. The second plate is, where is the correct angle to predict the next set of movements Aljamain's going to make, so I can either stop him from moving or move faster than him and continue this sort of tirade of damage. And there was a moment when he shifts to his right-hand side and is landing shots, and he takes a downward-facing grip on Aljamain Sterling's ankle. What that does is that pushes Aljamain one way, and that's to the turtle. Because if he's trying to turn the other way, he can't, because Sean O'Malley's pushing the ankle away and he's continuing to land shots, right? So Aljamain goes up to turtle, and I think O'Malley realizes at that moment that if he can force Aljamain to turtle, the likelihood is he can absolutely finish the fight. Massive blows. He can close that space off, because up until that point, he was landing big hammer fists, but it wasn't one of those finishes, you know, when guys fall into half guard or they fall into that sort of pseudo open guard and just hammer down. The gravity, the impact of those shots, I don't think was exactly what O'Malley wanted. And so he uses this ankle grip to force Sterling into a turtle position, lands some more shots, and then obviously the referee calls it off. But I think that ankle grip and that changing of angles with his feet is really overlooked. And it was an absolutely pivotal and beautiful part of the sequence.
Yeah, absolutely. Credit to Sean O'Malley. Tim Welch as well, I believe, deserves some flowers after this. You know, for the game plan that he mustered up here. We were giving Ray Longo the big one, and rightly so as well. But, you know, fair play to Tim Welch. He went in there, they found a way, and the finish itself. Look, I'll say it out in the open. I originally questioned the finish after looking at it more, not that upset about it, but especially after hearing what Sean O'Malley said in the post-fight press conference is, you know, puts things into reality as well. He said in the press conference during that finishing sequence that he saw the eyes roll back in the back of the head of Aljamain Sterling 2, if not 3 times. Those are the views that we don't get to see watching on the TV. Those are the views that the referee gets to see and the fighters get to see as well. So look, wasn't going up in arms about the finish at all, but a slight question. And I mean, you know, a few people were questioning it because of the movement of Aljamain Sterling right as it was. And it's not so much the actual stoppage itself. Maybe like Shawnee and Graham were talking about on the big podcast, it was more so the timing of the stoppage, where he could have probably stepped in once or twice before he actually did. Harry, you had some thoughts on that?
I just wanted to ask both of you a question, really. Like, Marab posted, whatever the fuck it is now, tweeted. He posted something saying, I don't want Mark Goddard as a ref again. Like, we're fighters. We need to go out on our sword. And obviously all that's garbage, right? That's fine. But the rule is that Aljamain Sterling needs to defend himself intelligently. If we were to objectively look at the stoppage, could we argue that any of the movements he made were intelligent defense? Because I'm not sure that we can, right? Like, at one point,
it's such a gray area, really, like when you're talking about that.
Like, that's the question I wanted to ask, right? Did either of you feel, either live or after watching it again, that there were moments that Aljamain was beginning to, or was actually defending himself intelligently?
I don't think so. Like, I think when you look at these, and like we've talked about a lot of stoppages recently, what you have to look at, right, is the initial shot and it's usually like a knockdown and then a bit of ground and pound. You look at the initial shot and you have to take how big that initial shot was into consideration when you're looking at everything else. And then you have to take the reaction on the ground into play without forgetting about what just happened, right? So there was the example of that James Webb one from a few weeks ago. And funny enough, Mark Goddard was the referee on that too. You saw James Webb on that one. He went to a knee. He put his hand up to his face. I think he turned to his back. And then he gave up. You're making lots of different moves there that you could argue are an intelligent defense. And
if I might come in there just to back you up a little bit, you had an excellent point, Sean, during that stoppage about Mark Goddard, and it was something that he didn't do too much in the Sterling, and that was come in and say, move, do something, move. Like, when you're shouting that when you're trying to recover as well, like, you're not thinking straight and everything. And I thought that he did an excellent job in not kind of being overbearing on the finish on Saturday night, and good for Mark Goddard. Obviously, maybe kind of look back at James Webb and maybe felt like maybe he didn't, but I'll speculate maybe that he did, but I'm glad he didn't do that, because I think by inserting yourself into the fight that way, it is more of a distraction than it is trying to help the fighter.
Yeah, 100%. And I would totally agree with that. He just like, and I think that for the most part, you should do that. Let them fight, right? If they do something wrong, tell them they did something wrong and take a point or take a position or whatever. But on that, look, it was one of those ones, I think, where Mark Goddard gave him time more so than he normally would because of the gravity of the fight, right? And I know that's a very tough thing to actually do, because we know about all the brain injury and everything like that, but we know what we're getting ourselves into here as well when we watch that, right? And the problem with that is sometimes when you get that opportunity, you do come back a little bit, or you get a shot that wakes you up or whatever it might be. In this case, that kind of happened a little bit, right? A little bit. And it didn't wake him up, it like turned him over almost, one of those shots. But the problem with this, and Ian, you mentioned it was just slightly mistimed. If it had been a shot earlier, no one be complaining about this stoppage. It's just so happened he went in and he stopped the fight as Aljamain Sterling was moving. Could you argue that move was an intelligent defense? I don't necessarily think so. It wasn't like a coordinated defensive move or anything like that. This is one of those ones that I don't think is like, if there hadn't been a time, right, 1 to 2 shots earlier where you said, oh shit, that should have been finished, then maybe you could argue, but there was that. And just the final thing for me, you mentioned earlier about the way your body reacts, or looking at the body, looking in the eyes. Anyone watching that can see Aljamain Sterling and the way his body reacts after a couple of those hammer fists. He was done at that stage. He was given an extra opportunity and he stopped the fight. Nothing wrong with it.
Given off like all the facts and all the kind of information that we've got over the last couple of days after the finish, and simply the fact of with the way Sean O'Malley was like, I seen the eyes roll back in his head 2 or 3 times. So that means that Aljamain Sterling was out 2 or 3 times. And, you need to protect the fighter's best interests. Apart from that, Harry, I'd like to talk a little bit before we move on to the co-main event real quick about how both of these gentlemen handled themselves throughout this fight week and after the fight as well. And I would have to commend both of these gentlemen in victory and in defeat for the way they handled themselves. I thought that, what was the word I'd be looking for? O'Malley was stoic all week in not getting excited, not kind of just giving like very kind of calm, cool responses, very zen-like. Same with his performance, same after the fact as well. And I want to give a maximum amount of credit for Aljamain Sterling for handling the defeat, not bitching to Mark Goddard. Obviously slight complaint and disappointment after the fight, which is natural, but not going up in arms, causing a strop, not making any excuses, and just coming out and even giving the media some time after the fight is a big step in the right direction. But I mean, we knew all of those things from Aljamain Sterling anyway. It pretty much is a class act and always has been. But I mean, this week was an A+++ week for Sean O'Malley, the way he handled everything. And it's not a star-making performance. It's an already a guy who is a star, which turned into a superstar this weekend. And it was a historic moment. I feel that will live on in the UFC for quite a number of years right now. Considering what kind of a superstar O'Malley is, and what could potentially come down the line for him as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's, and we'll get on to Ian Garry afterwards, but there's a way in which Sean O'Malley has sort of relaxed into who he is. He's relaxed into this character. There are elements of it that are obviously manufactured. There are elements of it that are obviously exaggerated. But it does feel that in the most part, this is actually who Sean O'Malley is. Right? This is who he is as a person. And I think the maturity, the Zen-like nature that you've talked about, I mean, he talks about all this mindfulness stuff that he does and ways in which that helps him prepare for fights. But he's a father now, And I think it's something he takes very seriously. He talks about it often on the live streams and things that he does with his personal brand. But I think he has it right. He's a very smart human being. You can tell that from the way he fights, but you can also tell that from the way he speaks about his preparation. You can tell that about the way he runs his specific brand. You know, not so long ago, he was saying to Dana, I'm not fighting any of these guys that are ranked or really, really elite level until you pay me the money. And again, we all at the time said, be careful what you wish for. But it turns out he knew what he was doing.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, you can't be going fucking fighting Peter Yan based off your Dana White contender series 5-5 contract. Like that to show that level of smartness too, to kind of stand up for what you believe in, and also knowing what the consequences of doing that are as well. Because we've seen many a fighter have done that with the UFC time and time again. And yeah, we did it. Me and Shawnee were on. Me and you spoke about it as well, Harry, about, you know, that's, you get that big pay, you get the big fights, and you get the tough fights. But he's handled it all perfectly. But we also have to remember with Sean O'Malley is that he was only a fucking kid when he came into the UFC. He's still growing up. Yeah, he's still growing up. At 28 years of age, becomes the youngest UFC champion, I believe, right now, and has the world at his feet. I mean, do you have any quick thoughts on what we were saying there, Sean, before we move on to the co-main event?
Yeah, I think, look, not for me, that sort of malarkey, you know, with the putting on and buying, you know, buying Mercedes, or what did he buy, Lamborghinis and all of that. It's a very American thing, and there's a certain audience out there that will buy into it. And absolutely, if that is your audience, he seems to have, you know, like the weed smoking, you know, Xbox playing, Jake Paul loving Americans. He seems to have got into that side of it, and he seems to have, like, he's on with the Nelk boys I see all the time and all that malarkey. You know, if that is your game, absolutely go and do it, no problem. I don't give a shit about any of that, right? I give a shit about the fighting. And look, maybe when we talk about Ian Garry, maybe I'll give a shit about it with the Irish side and the part I understand, but I'm willing to delegate the likes of Sean O'Malley to other people. The only thing I would say about it really is that, like, buying fucking Lamborghinis and stuff when you're on, you know, the 10 and 10 White series contract is probably not advisable to anyone, okay? But look, the gamble has paid off and all, and it hasn't affected his fighting. He's gotten better and better all the time, and he looks absolutely fantastic. But you know what? One thing I would say as well, sometimes because of our opinions on people or the way they're doing things, so we let it boil over into our opinions on them as a fighter. Like this happened with Colby Covington all the time. Like, I think like 99% of people out there probably think Colby Covington is like this stupid idiot actor thing. Like, I'm sure even like the MAGA people probably believe that, like, this lad is actually taking the piss out of us, like, if you're in any way intelligent at all. But like, you can't deny he's an unbelievable wrestler and all that. Like O'Malley, he can have all this shtick and all. You can't deny he's an unbelievable fighter, you know. And we talk about Ian, talk about Conor McGregor back in the day, talk about, like, that happened with Ronda Rousey as well, you know, in a way. So yeah, we need to separate that. We need to remember that as well.
I try my best to do that, like, and we'll talk about Ian as well. But I mean, like, I even tweeted it out. Like, I mean, if you can go in and fight like Sean O'Malley did on Saturday night, you can say or do whatever the fuck you like, in my opinion, and that's about the size of it. Someone who didn't go in there and talk any shit whatsoever was the sweetheart Chinese strawweight champion Zhang Weili, but she was no sweetheart when the cage door locked on Saturday night, when she got in there and got her hands on Amanda Lemos and just put on a clinic, Harry. This was fantastic in so many ways. We're seeing her develop as a fighter, learn from past lessons, and showcase some new abilities every time she steps inside the octagon. We'll speak about it in a positive manner, but at the same time, the fight itself kind of lacked that little bit of magic, because the writing was pretty much on the wall early days in this one, and you could kind of foresee that, you know, Lemos was not good enough to be competitive, but good enough to kind of remain in the fight, and that's the way the story went. Zhang Weili went on to win that unanimous decision. What were some of the highlights of her performance for you, Harry?
All of it. I mean, like, to me, this was a magic fight, and it was a magic fight because you just get to see excellence, like real excellence.
Yes.
Even like the first note I wrote was after 4 seconds, and it was the grace in which she moves her feet is in fucking sane. Like, just, it's hard to put into words when you watch someone fight like that, the level of skill that they are operating at. the hours and hours of arduous and tenuous work that's gone into creating that, even just that cadence and that canter in their stance work is just incredible. And the thing that impressed me the most was Zhang Weili's IQ in this one. Like, immediately she's like, oh, okay, so she hits hard, grand. And the takedowns are all essentially perfect. She notices a gap, she takes the gap. Amanda Lemos throws 2 kicks, right? 2 kicks. First one lands, second one she catches, she's on her ass. Like, the timing to catch the read so fast, catch a kick, and she hits the Katzengano, the Chris Cyborg against Holly Holm, where she's catching the lead leg kick and timing the second kick where she sweeps the leg out from underneath her. And
she also did an excellent job in kind of drawing out and using Lemos's power and explosiveness against her too, by drawing her out by the double jab, where, you know, Lemos wants to kind of come over the top and counter that single jab. Well, how you kind of counter that counter punch is you throw that double jab, you get that reaction, and then she utilized that as well. Did you see that when they were fighting as well?
Yeah, I mean, for the small part of time that Amanda Lemos had on the feet, right? Like, Weili Zhang just... We could sit here and do a whole fucking podcast on this fight round by round, right?
Unreal. Like, in terms of development of women's mixed martial arts, I think Zhang Weili is head and shoulders above what technique she brings in. Little small things like that by the use of the double jab. There's also something else that she done very well and took a big weapon away from Lemos, is that Lemos, coming into the fight, what she did very well was she countered calf kicks by switching stances. And when she switched stance, she used to kind of come over the top. Let's just say she was standing orthodox. She switched stance when the leg kick is thrown, and she counters that leg kick with the backhand. So that would be her left backhand. Zhang Weili didn't even show that to her at all on Saturday night. What she came in with instead of that calf kick was that side kick down the middle, which completely takes away the stance switch, completely takes away any chance of Lemos countering in. Like, those are the small intricacies that make, like, I'm sorry that I said there was a lack of magic, because I agree with what you said, even though maybe I say a lack of jeopardy, because the magic still existed in the technique that she was showing round in and round out and all the way through till the end of the fight. It was just, and of course, again, you can speak to her work on the ground as well. The big talking point, they lost their shit in the boot about this choke. It was never on. It was about dangerous, I would say, for about 1.5 seconds. There was that much danger, but as soon as she cleared the legs, it was done. Like, and I mean, I don't know. It seems like every time there's a non-choke in that the commentary boot, and it's mainly Joe Rogan who gets a bit excited about things as well, and kind of DC will follow Trump's with him. But like, that choke wasn't even close to being fucking finishing the fight. Harry, maybe talk us through why it wasn't.
Sure. So ninja chokes, generally, you want to restrict movement of your opponent left and right. Generally, you see ninja chokes, like you remember Arnold Allen was getting pucked around the cage for 2.5 rounds before he managed to ninja choke Mads Burnell from a single leg, right? The reason why that worked is because Mads had committed so much weight forward, and Arnold was able to lean his weight over the top. And then as Mads started to roll, was able to roll with him and restrict the movement. And that's how you lock off a ninja choke, right? Amanda Lemos was basically fighting with just squeeze the entire time. Now, don't get me wrong, as you rightly say, if she hadn't been able to extract her leg and Weili Zhang was stuck in that position, that's a dangerous position to be in if you're Weili Zhang. However, Weili Zhang was always going to be able to use her hands. You notice that she locked a gable grip immediately behind Amanda Lemos' head. That is mostly so she can extend her arms out and start to build some distance between Amanda Lemos' chest and the top of Weili Zhang's head. Then, as soon as she realized the choke was not going to finish her, she unlocked her hands and started to address the leg, right? It's at that moment, Weili Zhang then does everything in the right fashion. She knows that her neck's in an awkward position, and it's not something that Amanda Lemos is just going to let go of, right? Because then
it's just a waiting game at that stage once she cleared the legs.
So what she did is she gave Amanda Lemos some choices. She started to dominate the hip line. So she's like, you're not going to move me. And now you can't build up into me. So what are we going to do? Amanda Lemos says, I'm just going to keep choking. I'm just going to keep squeezing. So Weili Zhang lands a few pop shots, opens up the chin a little bit, moves the elbow a little bit, and then just starts kneeing her in the back. And it's like, you want to take some more of these? Like, I'll break your fucking shoulder if you want to do this continually. And obviously Amanda Lemos has to let go, but it's the transition immediately after that was so, so beautiful. So she's forcing Amanda Lemos to turtle, knowing that as she builds, Amanda Lemos can't cover that initial hook space because she's using it to choke her. And so as Amanda Lemos lets go, Weili Zhang's already sliding the body triangle hook in, and she takes the back instantly. Again, I'll just add this one thing because this is something that I personally have called for forever. Amanda Lemos gets her back taken, and she doesn't immediately try and roll through. What does Weili Zhang do? She gets two hands underneath the armpits, flattens Amanda Lemos down, and starts raining absolute fucking hellfire on her. She uses that back body mount and the pressure through her hips that's pinning Amanda Lemos to the ground as an anchor to just go fucking mental. And there are moments in that initial first round, I'd have had no problem with it being stopped. No problem.
Yeah.
But we talk about intelligent defense, and Amanda Lemos did an absolutely unbelievable job to survive those 25 minutes with intelligent defensive movements.
Absolutely. No questioning her heart or defensive work, Shawnee, but you did question Amanda Lemos's reliance on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where you went as far as to say she should forget about it. And I would agree with you as well, like, because, you know, at certain stages, you just got to work towards getting up and getting back to your feet where you are at your most strongest, and rather than just relying on snatching a pretty kind of a home run submission against someone who's not really easy to get out of there by submission.
Yeah, 100%. And like, look, it's easy for me to say if she can get a neck and get a bit of a win, you know, even if it is for a second, as you said, Ian, who am I to say you shouldn't do that? But like, I was actually discussing in depth with someone today, and if you, I watched the clip and someone said to me, slow it down. Like and when you said like a second and a half, it literally is only that. She passes it way quicker than maybe you.
That's all. That's all.
And you know what's funny then, right? Zhang Weili, and Harry, maybe you'll be able to speak about this, although you said it in depth there, so maybe I already said it, but like, it was kind of like a modified Van Flew almost immediately. Like, she was almost choking Lemos more than Lemos was choking her in that position, because she got the arm under the shoulder of Lemos and she was pushing down with pressure. It's like, who's subbing who here? Like, at that situation. And the commentary, like, on it, it's like, there was no way. She was just destroying her from then. But like, overall, it was, look, it was a workman-like performance from Zhang Weili for 2.5 rounds, or maybe a little bit, you know, around that, I suppose, between maybe the halfway point of round 2, then round 3 and round 4. And, you know, there's an argument Lemos won round 4, I suppose, out there as well. And it's all down, I think, to Lemos. Like, when your only objective is to survive, it's very tough for the opponent, like very, very tough. And yet, she, like, to credit Zhang, she still kept trying. She almost finished her in the 5th as well as the 1st, as you said there, Harry. Got a knockdown. In my opinion, that was a 10-8, you know. And it was another wonderful performance against someone who has that puncher's chance. And I actually give credit to Lemos, because, like, you know, we see some fights and, like, you know, you see a big puncher and they don't really try to have a puncher's chance even. But she was just taking her time and got to the feet. She was trying. She really 100%. Tried her best. It just wasn't happening for her. She was totally outmatched.
Yeah, and I mean, credit to her as well, like, for making it work later in the fight as well, not getting disheartened, not giving it up. And look at her, what was it? Was that her first championship fight, or was she in there with somebody else before? That was her first one. Look at it. It tells in a way, you know, and that's a big occasion for her. It didn't happen for her, but she also took on a phenomenal mixed martial artist in Zhang Weili. And I have to say that, well, we were all singing Zhang Weili's praises before she became champion, but now we're seeing this kind of her coming into the elite level. And if we're talking about Ronda Rousey, that kind of propelled women's mixed martial arts before Amanda Nunes came in and propelled it even further. Well, now we're looking at athletes like Zhang Weili, who is going to propel that kind of women's mixed martial arts and the level and the technique and skill that they bring in to another level once more again, I feel.
Just one thing as well on that. It's so true, because, like, it feels like MMA is one of the only sports where, like, the women's side of the sport isn't being pushed in an unnatural way. Like, we've seen it this week with the World Cup final. We see it all the time. It's like, this weird, unnatural, just like let it kind of go by itself, and it might take an extra few years, but like that's how you're going to build people's real interest in it. Like MMA, I think, has done a great job on that, and we might look at MMA negatively in a lot of ways and say, oh, these are backward fucking idiots, but like women's MMA was accepted very quickly once it came into the UFC. And I don't think anyone ever looks at a fight like this and go, oh, why is this in the middle of a card or anything like maybe other sports would look like. So credit to fucking MMA for that, I think, and credit to like the ability of a lot of these women now, considering like if you think about it, really, MMA is only, the UFC has only been around for 30 years, and the men had what, 20 years of a head start to them, or a little bit more.
That's the thing.
A lot to be honest, in terms of professional preparation. Massive.
We're not trying to be disrespectful and saying, oh, women's mixed martial arts and men's. It's the fact of the matter, because men's has been around for longer and they've had longer to develop. But like that, I actually never heard that point counteracted, is that the speed that women's mixed martial arts is catching up with men's mixed martial arts. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And, you know, fuck me, man. Put Zhang Weili in there every weekend and I'm watching that. I just love watching her fight. Love her as a fighter. Like, and at the end of the day, fighters are fighters and fights are fights. And there's no hiding place when you get in there and fight, no matter what kind of, if you're a man or a woman or whatever. Like, that's the way it is. Harry, you had something to say before I put my foot into it here.
The name is Valentina Shevchenko. Do that.
Nah, no, there's too much going on at strawweight right now. Valentina Shevchenko isn't even the champion at the flyweight.
I need to see that. At some point, before they both retire and before Valentina really falls off a hill, I need to see that.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I with the content. Oh, there's a lot of moving blocks though to make that happen, but we'll never know. We'll see what happens. Look at plenty of movement in Ian Garry's performance from the very first bell to the very last bell. He went in there and beat up Neil Magny from pillar to post. You know, talking about a lack of jeopardy, talking about a lot of wonder. I mean, me looking at this, the wonder was almost gone in the first exchange, Harry, with that massive leg kick that absolutely crumbled Neil Magny. And, you know, I wasn't too nervous for Ian Garry. Look, you always have that. Me as an Irish man, Shawnee, I'm sure it'd be the same. You have that slight little butterfly effect that's going on before going in, just about the wonder and the mystery of what's going to happen. But that was immediately gone once Ian Garry just jumped on the front foot. Harry landed an immediate calf kick, and there was another wrinkle to a very kind of high-level game that Ian Garry is bringing into the octagon. You know, we hadn't seen him rely this much before on calf kicks, and it's just another little wrinkle that he showed in there against his most experienced opponent to date and one of the most experienced fighters in the UFC right now.
So I'll go as far to say, and this might be hyperbole, this might be because of how impressed I am about the performance. That was Ian Garry's Eddie Alvarez performance. It was that. He went in, he didn't get touched, and he absolutely decimated a fella. The only difference was that he didn't get the finish, and we'll talk about that. Fine. I don't even think he needed the finish, because I feel like
definitely didn't.
In this performance, he went in and okay, I'm just gonna do the spiel, right?
Go for it, man. Go for it. Just let it out.
This was the reason why I was so impressed with this performance is because when Ian Garry made his debut against James Sheehan, wasn't it? James Sheehan? Debut in Cage Warriors?
Yes.
James Sheehan. Yeah. He made the performance against James Sheehan, and then we said, fucking hell, lads, we might have something on our hands with both of these fighters. Both of these fellas are fucking good fighters. Ian Garry quickly spoke about wanting to do this the right way, wanting to build himself up the right way at the right time, and he basically stole Shawnee's idea and said, I want to fight the best fighters when I am at the best. And he meant that hierarchically. He went through Cage Warriors, and the fellas that had absolutely nothing for him, he just tore through them and made it look ridiculously simple, right? Silly. Fine, no problem. We then get to Jack Grant on the cusp of title shots. And he says, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to grapple Jack Grant. And we're all like, really? That seems silly. He goes out, does it, and decimates him. He says, Rustam Akman, ex-UFC, is he? Grant, no problem. Goes out, finishes in the first round. And
kind of grappled Jack Grant because of the knee injury, I would say, but still your point stands.
He went and beat a man at his own game. No problem.
With one leg.
Right. He then comes into the UFC and he immediately said, I'm not ready to fight Kamaru Usman right now, but I'm going to be. And trust me, I'm putting myself in the best position so that I can be. And so I'm going to take my time. Don't worry about me. You'll see me and you'll hear from me in a couple of fights. And he takes those first three fights and he just performs exactly how he needed to. Goes out, gets wins. Kyo Young Kang comes along and we get to see the perfect story arc. Goes out, looks a little bit lackadaisical, a little bit off the ball, gets dropped, turns around, steps it up a couple of gears and absolutely destroys Kyo Young Kang. Fine, no problem. We roll into D-Rod and he's like, cool, this is the first guy that's going to offer me a little bit of something. Steamrolls him. Comes out, calls his shot. Okay, he doesn't get Wonderboy, fine. Gets Magny, or gets Neil immediately, fine. Gets Neil Magny. There's a bit of beef, there's a bit of whatever. He comes in and he performs in an absolute masterclass. He has gone out from day one and he has told people that this is what he was going to do. He was going to take his career slowly and he was going to allow the skills to build whilst building the brand, whilst building the name. You can have as many problems as you want with the brand that he's building, with the way he's going about it, whether you think it's real or fake or manufactured or whatever. I don't give a shit. My point that I was going to make, and Shawnee made it earlier, about Aljamain Sterling and of Sean O'Malley, have whatever brand you want. Like, I don't really care. I ain't got to listen to it. If I don't like it, and I don't really like some of the things he and Garry did in the fight, I don't care. I don't need to see it. I don't need to pay attention to it. What I need to see is inside those 15 minutes, what do you do? And Ian Garry blew me away.
Your brand is what you produce in the 15 minutes or the 25 minutes that you're inside in that fucking octagon. And that's the be all and end all. And it's the same with O'Malley. It's the same with Ian Garry as well. Okay. You can take it or leave it. Any of the stuff that he does outside of the cage and look at whatever. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't like I have kind of said it's not for me, but I don't care about it that much where it's going to construe my opinion all that much, because at the same time I sat back on the sidelines when Conor McGregor started doing all kinds of mad shit and was getting away with it as well, because you know what he was doing as well? He was going in there and he was performing. And I'm glad to hear you saying that. It was a masterclass in my opinion too. And I'm the most excitable person at the best of times when I'm coming in here. But the one question I had about Ian Garry was, I was uncertain if he was going to be able to propel himself into contendership and championship status. And I think those questions are gone for me, at least after that performance on Saturday night. I think at 25 years of age, I would be absolutely astonished if he didn't go on to win a UFC title with the level of skill set that he's showing there now. And that's a big statement to say. I might be getting too excited.
Do you want a bigger one? Do you want a bigger statement? I think he'd destroy Leon Edwards right now. I think he'd destroy him.
Wow, that's great.
I think he's that good. I think he's that good. This was a phenomenal performance. And I know Harry mentioned earlier about the stoppage. I saw a few people saying that, look, it's a clear misunderstanding of what fighting is if you're giving out about him not getting a stoppage here. He fucking
30-26, 30-26, 30-24. What more can you do?
What more do you want?
You can get the finish. But look, to talk about, I'll let you go on to talk a little bit about the finish. For me, it's like there's three things I look at here. Short notice fight. Last time he pushed for a finish against Song Kenan, he got hurt. So he showed that level of patience in there, which is growth. Plus, he wants to fight in December as well, which is only 3 months. You get rocked, you get cut.
I don't even think you need to go to the three of them, to be honest. He almost finished the fight multiple times. If it was a different referee in there, Keith Peterson's one of the best referees, but he lets fights go. There wasn't 1 second in that fight where he wasn't pushing to push the fight to the utmost in terms of beating Neil Magny. Okay, you could say he let him stand up a few times, but that's smart. He let him stand up so you can give him more of a beating. He was destroying him. He was throwing 100% leg kicks. He was throwing 100% body kicks. He was throwing 100% head kicks. He was throwing 100% punches. He was doing everything you possibly could. And you know what? I think the start of the second round, was it? Let me just look at my notes. Yeah. He ate maybe 2 to 3 jabs and he just, no, I'm not eating any more of them, and just destroyed him again. Like, maybe people don't realize how good Neil Magny is. He's long, which Ian Garry wouldn't be used to. He's way bigger than most people he fights. Not Neil Magny. He's good at grappling. he's Irish, he can't grapple sort of thing. I think we all know that's not true from anyone who's watched Ian Garry for the last few years.
We haven't even probably seen fucking 10% of his grappling skills in the UFC so far.
No, it was a phenomenal performance from Ian Garry in every single aspect. Like, it was brilliant. I can't get over it. And like,
we got another one, lads. I didn't think it was going to come around too. I didn't think it was going to come around this soon, but it's like it was that, like, I was there watching the fights. It was on my own, and it was like I was in chill out mode, and then Ian Garry came out, and I still was on chill out mode, and then I came in and I seen him, like, he got me not out of my seat, but like I was like so intrigued, like, for the duration of the fight, even though, like, you know, there might be criticism about not getting the finish, but tell me you weren't excited or intrigued by every single moment of that fight.
I didn't get that for 1 second.
Not for 1 second did I get it either. Like, and I'm glad, I don't know, like, maybe I'm glad that's why I wanted Harry to come in first, because I didn't want for me to get too excited about it, or maybe me to get feed off the excitement of Shawnee as well. But it's like, you have to say it as it is. And we're lucky as fucking Irishmen that we're getting to witness another guy that can compete at the highest level in the UFC. Like, and the outside of the cage antics, all right, hit or miss, but whatever. Like, it's all about what you can do when you're in there, because that's all that anybody will talk about in the prolonged period of time of his success.
I do have some critiques, though, just a couple. Now, the reason why I have critiques is because we're talking about Ian Garry as if he is championship level competition. If we are talking about him at the elite level, we have to critique him as if he's an elite level fighter. On the finishing, there was one moment I will critique him not getting the finish. He rocks Neil Magny bad with a teep to the face, and then he lands a right hand right after it. And Neil Magny already is falling all over the gaff with one leg. But there is Ian Garry, instead of taking one step back and picking his shots, he like runs in 2 steps and throws a flying knee to the chest.
100%.
And it was at that moment I was like, come on. Like,
I think he did that though, because there was like multiple semi moments like that. And he was like, right, to finish him here, I'm going to have to do something special. And like that actually goes to the point, like he's trying to get the finish there, and he's pushing it beyond the realms. You know, we've talked about other people who don't push it even close to the realm of getting the finish, but Garry tried to push it. I do understand you, because there's nothing more frustrating than someone who overthrows a shot in that position. Yeah, but I would agree with
for that flashy one. Even he had him hurt in other spells where he was throwing up double high kicks as well. And he'll probably go back, he'll look at that and realize that, and it'd be interesting to see if he will learn from that. And at the same time, you know, we're talking about a 25-year-old that has 13 professional mixed martial arts and all the time in the world to kind of work on those little mistakes. And I mean, I'm just fucking, I mean, let's talk about him kind of getting the next steps, and intriguing the Irish audience, and kind of coming in there as well. It's like we talked about that level of, or that maybe level of disinterest that maybe was coming from Ireland, or maybe it wasn't as big as what Conor has. And I think me and Sean talked about briefly today, what Ian Garry is trying to do is actually kind of the opposite of what Conor McGregor achieved inside the UFC, where he did get the love and adoration of all the Irish fans. He did get the chance to headline Cage Warriors events in Dublin, and you know, get that following there, whereas Ian Garry has not had that chance yet. He's not headlined the Cage Warriors card in Dublin. He had the split from Team KF, which, you know, a lot of Irish fans would have been disappointed about, because, you know, you're missing out on that little bit of a connection from Ireland as well. But I think, you know, what he's doing can't be really kind of criticized all too much, because he's spreading himself out there. And what did we want Conor McGregor to do back in the day? I remember lots of critics saying, he needs to go out from SBG, he needs to spread himself around and go to these gyms. And Ian Garry is doing just that. So what he's doing is, you know, he's taking these little snippets, and he's taking the blueprint maybe that Conor McGregor has produced, but he's adding in his own little ingredients himself to kind of progress. And I think all of those together is an accumulation to the fighter that he is right now. And it's very exciting to see what fighter he can become in recent years. And up next is to try and get that acceptance in Ireland. And it's the UFC Dublin show that's going to somewhat do that for him, if it's matched correctly and if he goes out there and performs as well as he can do. What's your thoughts on that, guys?
He needs the Irish audience, doesn't he? Like, just I really think, right, to become that mega star in the UFC, like what did Conor have above everyone else, right? Conor had a whole country behind him. I don't think it's ever going to be like that for Ian Garry, right? But I think it can be a little bit, because the Irish people will get behind you. There's no doubt about that. But you have to kind of build yourself up. Like, we look at the Bellator cards in Ireland over the last few years. Like when Peter Queedy walks out, when Brian Moore walks out, when Kiefer Crosby had walked out, like these lads are, with all due respect to all them, they haven't got near the level that Ian Garry has got to yet. Now Queedy fought for a title and all in Bellator, so you know he got to a fairly good level. But you get what I mean. You know, this guy is a real world level ability guy we have right now. And I feel like what Ian and his team have tried to do over the last year maybe is try to do things to make themselves bigger. You know, they talked about having a plan for fight week, and we're going to put out this t-shirt and this video and all of that. And that's all well and good, right? That's all well and good, and it may help it more. I don't know if it will help or not. The fighting is what's helping, as we said earlier on. But with Ireland, you have to have a plan, because you don't live in Ireland. You don't really have that connection to Ireland anymore. You know, you're not one of Conor's teammates. You have the bit of the Conor thing. But what you need to do, I think, is get on the Late Hit Show. Get on an Irish radio station. Do Irish podcasts. I'm not mine now. Whoever else is out there, do it.
Triangle.
Yeah, indeed.
Anyway,
get the Irish audience on side, and I don't think it's a thing that'll be very hard. Now, if he's fighting,
it's like with the Irish audience, you need to kind of get that opinion from the Irish audience saying he's one of us, like, and really buy into that he's one of us, and we're like that with Conor. We're not here to take part, we're here to take over, like, you know.
That's not there at the moment, because we see it all the time. And people, like, there's no point denying. We see it on Twitter all the time from people. There is a disconnect there right now. Like, it was funny, I met someone in the shop today. I was telling you earlier, Ian, and I was like, oh Jesus, you know, he'd been a bit of a casual MMA fan. I was like, geez, Ian Garry is very good. And he's like, yeah, he's good, but I can't stand him, type of thing. Right. And now, to be fair, Conor had loads of that. Conor had more of that than Ian will ever have. But Conor was also known by everyone at that time. Ian needs to get the sports fans on side first. Just get the sports fans to know who he is, and then maybe become fans of him, and then push it like that. If the team are smart, that will be the concerted effort. Not the concerted effort before Dublin in maybe the summer of next year. It'll be the effort before New York. Get them on side for that. What do Irish people love doing before Christmas? It's going out to New York, don't they? I'm telling you, it's a trip that Irish people would be happy to take at that time of the year. They need to start that right now. Get Ian home to Ireland for a few weeks. Maybe get him training with someone. You know, maybe a few training sessions with Conor wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if Conor's training. Put them out there, get on a few radio stations or whatever, and push him like that. And that's the key, right? If you're talking about Ian inside the cage, that's set, right? We're set on that. But if you're talking about Ian pushing his brand to the next level, you can do all the Jake Paul shite you want to. You can do all the cannibalics and all that, great. But you will need something special, and that something special is the Irish people.
Yeah, absolutely. Harry, Madison Square Garden is being pushed around by Dana White as his next fight. I think Ian said himself he would prefer Vegas in December. We know we're probably going to see him in one place or another place. Harry, what do you think is the best next move for Ian Garry?
I think Ian wanted Vegas in December because that's what Conor was supposed to be fighting on.
Also, he mentioned tax as well.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Like, the reason it's taxed is because fucking Conor McGregor is going to be fighting on that card. And
no, it's more so that you get taxed more in
I know,
in New York than you do.
If you're fighting on a Conor card, you're making more money. If you're Ian Garry at this point, I'd imagine you're making more money than you would if you were fighting in New York, where you're paying extra tax anyway. But I think it doesn't really matter where he fights, right? Like you say, I think there's a larger thing afoot here, and that's twofold. That's one, that's decide who you're going to be, right? Personally, I didn't like the bird flips. I didn't mind them during the fight, but at the very end, when you've won and you've decimated a fella like that, pushing the bird into Magny's face just felt a bit like you've kind of taken a bit of shine off the absolutely insane performance that we've just seen. So there needs to be a decision about what we're going to do, right? Are we going to do the gimmicky, laughy, jokey, I'm going to slide pizza under D-Rod, a bit of pizza and a bit of weed by D-Rod's door and be super respectful? Or are we going to, do the Magny thing? Now, I understand Magny made a reference to what Ian thought was his child, and whatever these things get heated and tense.
It wasn't even Ian's child. It was more so a silly reference by Magny about beating his
Kids,
children,
right?
which is, yeah, look, probably a little bit of a slip there, and Ian grabbed on it as well. But I mean, that's all. That's all fucking fight talk to me, to be honest. I'm like, you know, you're creating a little bit more buzz. I do agree a little bit about the bird flip, and I think, like, what more humiliation do you need to give to a man after kicking the shit out of him for 15
100%.
minutes straight? You know, that's the way I would look at the bird flip situation. So, you know, you're right though, Harry. He needs to find that fine balance. But let's be real. Let's talk about what happened. He signed a deal with Jake Paul. And is he going to follow the Jake Paul blueprint of promotion, which is being disruptive, as he labels it, and going out there and getting people to dislike you, and more so than wanting people to tune in to see you win? It's more so kind of goading people to tune in to see you lose. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes for him down the line.
2 points on that. The first one is the fight to book is absolutely Jeff Neal, by the way, because if
you, for sure it is Jeff Neal.
Yeah,
it's got to be Wonderboy in Dublin.
I mean, I don't genuinely. I think that you could see it's a number one contendership in Dublin. That's what happens. If he goes out and beats Neil, and if he looks anything like he looked against Neil Magny, he destroys Jeff Neal, because he hasn't got to
based off that last performance, for me, destroys Neil and destroys Wonderboy as well, to be honest. You know, we could happens. No, Wonderboy is probably going to be smart enough not to take that unless they throw a boatload of cash at him. But he kind of mentioned it, but you know, it's not going to be like, he's very, very adamant on this fucking 6 fight thing, and it was brought up again, and I don't know how it's going to work. Like, you're going to run out of space eventually. Like, so, I mean, I don't know how that is going to work, but you know, now we're hearing him talking about the likes of Usmans and the Covingtons and everything else, and it's very, very exciting to hear that talk, because that's the real business end of things, and those are the fights that are going to be coming along in the next year or two for Ian Garry, and it's all very, very exciting. Any final thoughts before we move on and rattle through the rest of this card?
Just one very quick question to Shawnee, if anything, and that's, he signs to Jake Paul. Does that, we know that Dana is a fucking stubborn cunt. Does that hinder some of his progression if he starts turning up the antics and changing and being this, Jake Paul's my manager and he's this and he's that? Does that change anything?
I don't think he's signed to Jake Paul. I think he signed to his betting company, isn't he?
He's company. That's all. It's just a partnership. He's manager. Dana was brought that up. That someone brought that up at the press conference to Dana, and he's like, "No, I couldn't give a shit. Like, if Ian Garry is making UFC money, that's all that Dana White gives a shit about, to be honest." And that's how I would feel, you know. I do
agree with the flipping the bird thing and all, right? That's the flipping the bird thing, right? We've seen the Diaz brothers do it all the time. And why did the people like it when they do it? It's like, it's their thing, right? It's natural to them. It's not natural to Ian Garry. We know, like, this manufactured. Like, no, you cannot fake it. Like, we all know that. We all know what we saw. It was like a brilliant natural fighter and this weird manufactured fake persona that's trying, like, the word disruption. I hate it more than any fucking word in the fucking in the dictionary. I hate it with a passion. And if you're one of those people, like, if you're a person who wants to disrupt, that's mean you want to just be like talk about disruption. You want to be like, you want to be that persona. That's not going to work. Be what you are. Like, Ian Garry's a really interesting guy. And you know what? I actually could see Ian Garry flipping the bird to someone and it being natural. He's that type of guy too. There's a bit of the John Joneses about Ian Garry, and I don't think people realize it. Like, there's a bit of a raw bastard about Ian Garry. In terms, not in terms
like,
of,
he's super like, I mean,
violent.
Like one thing that we don't talk about enough when it comes to fighters is, if you are a fighter that has the want and doesn't mind going in there and hurting somebody, you're going to get a kind of way further ahead than someone, you know. We've often heard fighters like, I don't enjoy doing this. It's just that I'm good at it. Ian Garry enjoys doing this, and Ian Garry enjoys hurting people as well. And it's the kind of that sadistic mentality in there. But you know what? You fucking need that if you're going to get to the very top. And Ian Garry has it. He's throwing everything with intent. He's a violent, violent, violent man. And all of this kind of coincides into a really, really good fighter. And it's just great that he's Irish.
Just last thing that we should, I myself definitely should clarify. he does very well at keeping it inside the cage as well, unlike some of those other fucking people, right?
100%.
And that is a key to it as well. He's a phenom, and he does. And look, the fact that you do keep it inside the cage and do it really well inside the cage means you don't need anything else. You really don't. And there's special times ahead, lads.
Absolutely. Look at Da'Mon Blackshear went in there and tried to be a little bit.
He was fucking Rob blind. I called it. I said he'd win. He was good.
Well, we got hashtag MMA Twitter now. He was robbed blind, but look at he came in here. Harry, I know you said you wanted to talk about this, and I'm going to hand that over to you straightly. Da'Mon Blackshear put in an absolutely phenomenal performance on Saturday night, even in defeat. It was close, as Sean said. It could have easily went his way. Mario Bautista was the one who took home the decision on the night unanimously. 2 weight cuts, 2 fights in a week, and the man didn't look like he looked like he went out there and was going for a walk in the park. Like, it was unreal performance, and that man would have won that fight easily if he didn't have to cut weight or fight the week before. I think. Now, look, with Mario Bautista, I don't think he showed his true skill set in there. Maybe, the drama of the opponent change, stuff like that. We don't know what's going on. Look, at credit to him as well. He had to dig deep, and he had to kind of find a way. And look, he was rewarded the unanimous decision. But to me, I even said it during this fight, the performance of Da'Mon Blackshear and how he made this fight competitive, Harry, was unbelievable.
So I scored the fight for Da'Mon Blackshear. Going in before the fallout, I thought Mario Bautista would absolutely destroy Cody Garbrandt, and I think he still would, frankly. But I feel like I agree with you. One of my notes on this fight was halfway through round 2, and I've said 2 weight cuts in a week is going to do this to a man. Like the output and the level of power that Da'Mon Blackshear was able to really generate through his body just fell off a cliff, like absolutely fell off a cliff.
Yeah, you could see it like kind of coming into the midway point of round 2, wasn't it? Where I thought, oh shit, like he might fall off, like you said, fall off a cliff altogether, where Bautista might come in and swarm him up, but he dug deep again, and he got to the finish. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bautista understood what was happening halfway through the second, right? He had a rough first round, and I still scored the second to Da'Mon Blackshear. I thought he did enough. I have no problem with 29-28 either way. Like, it was a very, very, very close second round, absolute toss-up. But I think that's one that Mario Bautista kind of gets away with a little bit. It should be a wake-up call for Mario Bautista. Mario Bautista is absolutely ranked fighter potential, but the thing that rings true in my head all this time is you look at Da'Mon Blackshear's record and it doesn't look anything special. But Javid Basharat said, Javid Basharat said immediately after fighting him in the post-fight presser, he said, that guy is way better than you think he is. And Absolutely. He is going to have a really good UFC career. And I absolutely believe him.
And we had highlighted a couple of his performances as well, Harry, on the preview show and stuff like that as well, showing that, he was a pretty good fighter and took a chance last week coming in on short notice, or this week coming in on short notice, and did an excellent job. Your quick thoughts, Shawnee, before we move on?
Yeah, I thought I went back and I watched a bit of Bautista beforehand, obviously, to talk for the betting show and the preview show and stuff. And I was like, yeah, maybe I made my pick a little bit too early, and I went, I went overboard. And honestly, when the fight started, I was like, yeah, that's going to be a problem here. But by God, like, 2 things happened, right? I think Blackshear fought brilliantly, and I don't think Bautista fought that well. Sometimes we forget, right? It was a short notice fight for Bautista as well. Not in terms of camp, but in terms of preparation, and that does affect a person. Maybe, you said that about Ian Garry. I don't think I even said it about it. Maybe it's something
I was going to say we should have said that, maybe that lack of preparation time for Ian Garry to find those shots to finish, but
not necessarily in that, but like just in general, I think it can definitely be an issue. I thought Blackshear did win the fight. I think, look, one thing was proven in that I think Blackshear is a top prospect as well, and on the way up. And I agree with what you said there, Ian. If he had a full camp to prepare for that, he would have won. Now, at the other side, I just said Bautista didn't have the full camp, so it's a different fight. But either way, 2 very high-level skilled guys. I think one guy showed it a lot more on Saturday night, and he was unfortunately the guy that lost. Look, the judge and I would agree with what Harry said. It was a close one. I picked Blackshear, so I'm going MMA betting Twitter type of thing here. But yeah, a very good fight.
Absolutely. Look, at another good fight was Chito Vera versus Pedro Munhoz to open the card. Close fight as well. Shawnee doesn't think this is a good fight. Harry was nodding his head, and we might not. I wouldn't class it I class it a good, interesting technical fight. Harry, I want to let you share your opinion on the fight first.
Sure. This was just, again, a perfect display of why scoring is what it is. Like, this was a perfect display of Munhoz doing a really good, I mean, so there was some interesting tactical battles, and there was some interesting reads, and there was some interesting developments as it happened. Like, one thing that the first round, Munhoz was just all over him, and Vera was just landing his clean shots, damaging shots. And you could tell immediately. Now, I know that lacerations on the face don't count in the judging scorecards, but Vera came out looking as though he'd just gone for a walk with his kid, and Munhoz looked like he'd ran into a wall. And I think the thing that interests me in the first round is Munhoz was trying to use both power and accumulation to take the first round away from Vera. Now, in my scorecard, Vera won that first round. And then in the second round, Munhoz realized that just going for volume was going to lose him rounds, because Vera was able to sit, pull the punch out of him, and land with a way harder shot. And so Munhoz started to try to fight Vera's game, which was far less volume and way more power. And then it got close, right? Because Vera isn't used to that. Vera isn't going 1-for-1. I'm going to hit you just as hard as you hit me. That's not a style of fight that he's used to. And so he wasn't able to plant his feet quite as much. And so we got to see a bit of Vera movement. We got to see a bit of a switch up, a B-side to that power striking, if you like. And for that alone, I saw a new wrinkle to Marlon Vera, and I liked that. But for Pedro Munhoz, I mean, it's a tough situation, right? Like, you stand in front of him, you try and fight technically, you try and fight your game, you try and fight cleanly, skillfully. And Marlon Vera's like, yes, all those 6 shots you've just hit me with are great. Here's one, and I win. And, that's an interesting intricacy of the rule set, as you have that misnomer in Marlon Vera,
I had a quick chat with Shawnee on the night itself about Marlon Vera's style and how I find it. And I feel that his style makes fights a lot closer than they should be. And I feel if they would have a small bit more output in fights, that, you're turning a close decision win into a kind of a lopsided decision win per se. But I mean, without being too critical of it, because it's fucking working for him too. But it's like, it's something that when I'm watching, it's like a little bit frustrating, and it's mainly down to his gas tank and how much he has left at the end of fights, where he's barely even appears to be breaking a sweat or tired, where I feel is that you not have enough in you to kind of empty that gas tank maybe towards the end of the fight.
It's a catch-22.
I'm just say that again.
It's a catch-22 situation, though. Like, this change in approach has made him become a more top-level fighter. Like, if you change that approach and start going back to more volume, are you going to have as much success? Like, I would kind of say keep going with what you're doing. And
I'm just selfish and wanting to see fighters fight the way I want them to fight. So that's the truth in that kind of conversation.
Like, it's funny, because I think this is a very good game plan for like top level fighters, funnily enough, but it's the likes of Pedro Munhoz that'll get you in this sort of one, which is funny, right? Which is good and bad in a way. Him, like the way O'Malley fought the last day, was a similar sort of thing, right? And obviously they've fought before, and it ended in a weird way. But like, if they fought again, I think that'd be absolutely fantastic. I don't necessarily think it's the right fight to make, but as an actual A versus B fight, I would love to see it.
Yeah, didn't get too much into kind of what's next tonight, or we'll probably be here for 3 or 4 hours in fights, but interesting to see. Look, we know, I think we'll all be unanimous on what we want to see next for Chris Weidman after his fight with Brad Tavares. Lost the unanimous decision to Brad Tavares, and looked to and appeared to either tear his MCL or his ACL. That was confirmed on the... he ended up tearing both. Oh my goodness. Well, it should be it, Harry. I mean, I know you want to speak about this, and I kind of know what you're going to say, and rightfully so. Please share your thoughts.
I mean, Chris Weidman's given the sport enough. And I don't just mean the sport of MMA. I mean the sport of combat purely, right? A wrestling background, wrestled all his life, comes in, shocks the world not once but twice, wins the UFC title, holds it, has the rivalry with Luke Rockhold. I mean, gives us one of the most chilling, I think, references on the old Ariel Helwani show, which was he stood in front of the mirror after his shower with the belt wrapped around his waist and he said, "Is this it?" Like, that is something that sticks with me so deeply in my bones. And Conor McGregor said it best, that it was an achievement in of itself for Chris Weidman to make it back to the octagon. I'm not sure I needed to see him actually make the walk, you know, but for him, I think he needed to make the walk to prove to himself that he could do it. He made the walk. He did what he did, but it's done. Like, it's done. You've given enough. You've done enough. Thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you so much for the fights. But it's not just the Luke Rockhold beating that changes a man. It's everything that's come after it. And you don't want to see the Chris Weidman story tainted any more than it already is. And that's my fear.
Yeah, it's like that's the general consensus that's coming out after the fight, Johnny. And you know, Dana White spoke about it as well. It's like, what's left for Chris? And I think we all kind of had that mindset on the preview show, is that just getting back, like Harry said, to this position and being able to kind of recover and make the walk was a victory in its own right. But after the fact, we see him backstage with his knee, the leg that was already operated on in ribbons and wrapped up, and his other leg, apparently with the MCL now and the ACL, as Harry confirmed, done, and he's there and out the back in the wheelchair, and we're like, what are we doing here? It just hopefully it's not a scene that we have to see again. And you know, you're talking about those injuries, that's another year and a half, 2 years out before you can fight again. So maybe his body is making that decision for him at this stage.
Yeah, and you know, this is a weird thing to say, right? But it's not even so much the injuries that I would be as concerned about. Like, you go through a fight, you know, you're going to get injuries, and it's just unfortunate. Obviously, it was the legs were, he broke his leg, he shattered his leg, and now his legs are injured again, right? But that's going to happen, right? He could have won the fight and had that injury. You know, what is worrying for me is, right, so just first of all, the positive. He got back in there. He went to a decision with a top. Is he top 15? He's borderline top 15 anyway, guy, and got there. He came back like it wasn't. You know, he competed, right? He competed, and he got there, right? I don't want to go overboard in terms of how well he did or anything like that, and I don't want to, I don't want to baby him or anything like that. But he did. He got back in there. It was beautiful to see him making that walk. It was brilliant, right? But when. And, you know, people will know what I'm about to say here, right? But when you get the thought of, like, this is like BJ Penn in your head when he's fighting, that is the only option for that, is you have to retire. But, like, this is a good way to go out, right? This is a good way to go out. You have beaten the odds. You made it back. You got to a decision. That's it.
You can say body, like, I mean, fighters will grasp at those things. He'll say, my body let me down. I could have done this. I could have done that. You know, and you need to grasp at that when you're an older fighter too. And I wouldn't be rating for doing that at all. I think that's the smart thing to do. But hopefully what you need to rely on is that he has good people around him. He has the right inner circle that's going to probably lead him down the right direction and the correct decision to make. And you would like to think that someone like Ray Longo and Matt Serra and everybody like that are going to be able to kind of have that conversation with him also. And, you know, Dana White kind of echoed those sentiments on the pre-fight or post-fight press conference as well, when asked if he would give Chris Weidman another fight, and kind of steered in the direction of retirement as well. But like we said, great to see Chris Weidman back. It's a good comeback story. Obviously, it wasn't a fairy tale comeback story. We wish him a speedy recovery, and we thank him for all the good moments that he's given us inside of the octagon as well during his storied career. One of the biggest shocks. He is still my boy. One of the biggest shocks ever. Him taking out Anderson Silva that time. So, I mean, unbelievable stuff from Chris Weidman. And look at, I mean, it doesn't have to be all over for him in fighting. Hopefully he kind of goes in on that Sarah Longo team and adds some of his knowledge and his passion for mixed martial arts to some of the up-and-coming fighters as well.
I just wondering, I wrote an article before the first Weidman Silva fight. It was like the article was quoted, Weidman Wolf tickets. I was like, there's no way.
No.
There's a whole article about it, and then he goes in and he sparks him. So yeah.
I think you might told that I sparked the story like it was actually involves Anderson Silva and Vitor Belfort when I was when they were giving Vitor Belfort the big one, thinking he was going to beat Anderson Silva. I wrote one small quick article about it, how he was going to do it, and then he ended up getting front kicked to the place. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. So fast forward, I found my way here eventually, but that was definitely a punch into the guts in my early media days. Early media days. I went 0-1 for predictions. Still releasing videos with wrong predictions to this day as well. So
Aren't we all?
These things happen in mixed martial arts media. Harry, I want to get you to run through the fights between Gregory Rodrigues and Dennis Tuliulin and Kurt Holobaugh and Austin Hubbard real quickly for me. We'll focus a little bit more attention on Katona and Gibson.
Grant, I mean, basically Rodrigues dumps Tuliulin into the mat and fucking smashes him to pieces. That's it. We'll move on. Kurt Holobaugh versus Austin Hubbard. It was a weird type of fight. Like, it was, I wrote here, and this is by no means disrespectful. I'll just read what I've written. This is the first note, by the way. It says both guys feel old. And then I went to Topology and checked, and I said, yeah, dude, 36-year-old Holobaugh and 31-year-old Hubbard. And I don't even mean in age. I mean just in general form. Like, you know, the way that they throw punches, it's just old school fighting. Now, I was impressed with Holobaugh's use of a guard, right? He had an attacking guard. He was actually looking for things from guard. But even me, like, I feel dirty saying that, you know? Like, guard doesn't work in MMA anymore until it does. But for Austin Hubbard, he just found that he was getting beaten everywhere. The takedowns weren't working, or if they were working, he wasn't able to get to positions that he was comfortable in. He was finding himself getting wrapped up into you know, grappling-based, submission-based offense and defensive cycles. And then on the feet, Holobaugh had a really nice rolling right hand. He had an ability to slip a jab. He looked okay, like, and you know, the triangle itself, the transition for the triangle itself was really, 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 really nice. Like a 101 transition, goes for the back, fails the back, comes off at an armbar. If your man, from an armbar, you have three options, right? You can either look to hitchhiker escape, which is where you take your elbow to the non-breaking hip and start to turn out, and then you come up on top. You either try to slip your elbow line directly out of the armbar, or you can come up and try and stack your opponent, right? If your opponent tries to come up and stack, you'll feel them start to switch their knees and place a posting hand on your inside knee to bring their chin up and past the line of your legs. Holobaugh noticed it, wraps him in a triangle. We are done out here. Finished. Lovely stuff. Fair play to both men, but I can't see either of them having a long and distinguished second run in the UFC, you know?
No, and I would imagine that I would only be Holobaugh that would be rewarded the contract after that. We little bit of a different talk for the next Ultimate Fighter finale between Brad Katona and Cody Gibson. I had big high hopes for this fight, having seen both of these gentlemen fight on the season, and the fight delivered 100%, and it resulted in the severe spotlight being shone on Brad Katona for his win. Just to kind of go back, Gregory Rodrigues did take out Tuliulin by KO with elbows, submission choke, like Harry said, for Kurt Holobaugh in round 2 over Austin Hubbard. And it was a unanimous decision win for Brad Katona in this fight, Harry, that got him the history-making accolade of being the 2-time Ultimate Fighter finale winner. And, you know, it's good to see him come in. He seems like a really dedicated, kind of hardworking guy. Probably was wrongfully released from the UFC in his first stint, came up against tough competition, went about it the hard way, put the head down, got some couple of wins, got into the house and beat up a good Cody Gibson in the finale too. A great fight overall. Please share your thoughts, please, Harry.
SBG, home of the double champs, eh? Look, it was a tough first round for Brad Katona. Cody Gibson used his range really, really well, kept him at bay, clinched really well, was forcing Brad to make some difficult decisions with range and with all these sorts of things. And Brad was doing his best to be on the back foot, land his angles, land his hooks, and generally, you know, do a good job. But I thought Brad did a good job in that first round of finding the rhythm of that left kick to left hook. I thought that landed beautifully the entire way through, and it was a great rangefinder to stop Cody Gibson from just marauding in on that mid-range and landing the straights that he did. Second round was by far Brad Katona's best round, put a bit of a beating on Cody Gibson in that second round, and then in the third, Gibson came out after having his body banged for 5 minutes in that second and looked really, really good to begin that third round. Had a bit of a second wind. I think Brad was blowing a bit at the time. He was fighting on the back foot a lot in those first 2 rounds. And then with about a minute and change to go, Brad lands a massive right hand right to the eye socket of Gibson, and fair play to the referee. He saw it for what it was. It was a shot. It wasn't an eye poke. And for the last minute, as I say, for the last minute and change, Brad just poured it on and managed to turn around what would have been an extremely, extremely close fight card up until that point. But yeah, like it's just a feel-good story, you know? You come back, again, as you say, probably wrongfully removed from the UFC at the time, definitely a better fighter than the performances, you know, in his last UFC stint would allow you to think. And it's good to see somebody back that will probably hang around the edge of that top 15, maybe just inside the top 15. And yeah, fair play to him. 2-time TUF champion, double champ. He could put that in his Twitter bio now and he could be a happy man. Fair play to him.
Absolutely. It was a performance worthy that put Conor McGregor to bed through the dedication of Brad Katona and had him singing. I missed that opportunity. No, I won't back down. But Sean, your thoughts on Brad Katona? It is a real feel-good story for Brad. You know, you can tell how dedicated and committed he is to the art of mixed martial arts, and you know he deserves to be in the UFC. And he went down the old hard road, as we talked about before, and he deserves his kudos. He deserves the Severe spotlight. He deserved the TUF Finale win, and he deserves his UFC contract, as does Cody Gibson as well, in my opinion.
100%. First of all, in the fight, what a great fight! Like it's hard to think of, apart from the second ever TUF Finale, it's hard to think of a better fight than that to end the TUF season, especially, you know, the recent seasons. Like, we don't even know the people in them. You couldn't probably name one of the last 10 TUF champions type of thing. You know, it'd be very hard. And this is definitely a memorable.
I can, Brad Katona.
Brad Katona, yeah. Brad Katona. I could name a few of them. I actually looked it up yesterday. Tatiana Suarez on one, and there was a few more. Anyway, oh no, I won't even try. I'm just looking here, right? 13-2, Brad Katona. Just that's some record for the people he's fought, and for like, do you know what he is? He's a guy that, and I hope that this doesn't come across wrong now, but like, he doesn't really have any God-given abilities, right? He doesn't have that God-given power of a McGregor or the size of an Ian Garry or something. I started talking back to myself there somehow, or you know, all of that. But what he has is, he, as you said, works hard, improves and everything. I shouted out Dave Roach on the podcast, and I want to shout him out again. I think the improvement in his striking, the cardio, unbelievable. Just like
it's like when the road he came back though over at Brave, Sean, that's no fucking easy road to come through either. You know what I mean? It's like they don't really match guys over there. They want to kind of their local talent there to do well, and you're always getting tough challenges over there. And he went there and got the head down and went and won a title at Brave before going into the Ultimate Fighter house. And I mean, that's what we mean by going through the hard road to get back and showing those improvements in each and every fight coming in there too.
No doubt about it. Look at the records of lads he fought in Brave. 8-0, 9-4, 11-2, 7-1. Like, he's gone in there against, as you said, their up-and-comers, their best guys who they want to get wins in there. And like, he just, you know, 3 of them were decision wins. You know, one of them a split decision. All tough fights, getting through them all the time. And that's the type of fighter that will just go on and go, and he'll get better at getting through them. He'll get better at dominating people. He can get better at winning fights. He's only, let me just look at his age here now. He's only 31 years of age. You know, he's the type of fighter you can get behind, right? He's the type of fighter, okay, he might never be a UFC champion or anything like that, but he's going to be in fun fights. He's going to be the type of guy who's going to lose 2 rounds and he's going to finish his opponent in the 3rd because he has trained harder than them. That's the type of fighter. And as a Darren Elkins fan, I love that type of fighter, you know, and I'm not necessarily saying he's a Darren Elkins type fighter, but you can, you know, Kieran Clark, another guy like that, just a hard worker, a good guy, a guy you can get behind, you know, and SPG have a good few of him now, to be fair, and he's definitely one.
Absolutely, yeah, let's do it. Let's have some fun, Jack. I'd love to speak with Brad. Hopefully we can make that happen. If anyone is listening and can make that happen, just hit me up. I'd love to speak with him. We kind of swapped roles here now. Like, I mean, he moving over to Ireland, I'm moving over to Canada, so we could make something happen here. You never know. Harry, from the excitement of the TUF finale to the travesty of the fight between Andrei Petroski versus Gerald Meerschaert, it was not good, my friend.
Nah, the best part of this fight was Petroski's hair, so we'll just move the fuck on.
Absolutely, yeah. We shall move on. And let's move on to the double dose of Silvas, who both put in good performances. Let's talk about Natalia Silva first, Harry. Look at I kind of went in here with one of the bets of the week would be Andrea Lee based off her price. And it was just a lazy, uneducated pick. I knew how good Natalia Silva was. It was just basically the price of Andrea Lee and the mere thought that she could at least put up somewhat of an awkward battle. We talked about it on the preview show, how she could do it, but the fact of the matter is she couldn't get close to Natalia Silva, who just fought expertly on the outside, busted up the nose of Andrea Lee and caused her all kinds of fits throughout a unanimous decision win. It's just another good step in the road up to 125-pound division for Natalia Silva. And we've got one here, Harry, as we've said before.
Definitely do. I just, you know, I was very tempted to write the spotlight about Natalia Silva, but I've written one about her before, and Brad Katona, I think, was just a little bit nicer of a story to write about. But my God, like, I expected a far tougher out here for Silva than this. We knew that she could strike. We knew that she was good, but the way in which she mixed her strikes together, the way in which she beat the legs, the way in which she beat the body, the way in which she came up top, all of it was just absolutely gorgeous. The fight I picked for her is, how about Miranda Maverick to test the grappling, or Amanda Hebas to test a bit of everything?
Love it. I love those calls. Any thoughts on the final fight between the other Silva? Or Shawnee, would you like to come in on Natalia Silva for a little bit?
She was good. Yeah, she was very, like, your pick of Andrea Lee wasn't miles off. She's very good at winning underdog fights, to be fair. But she didn't perform well here.
Well, like, I knew 1 minute into that fight, it was like, fuck, that bet is done. You know? But
the two Silvas were very good. Like Munhoz, we said it last week in the preview show, like Munhoz and Lee are good tests for the up-and-comer. Well, they're not necessarily up-and-comers. They've had a good few fights now, but I think two good performances from the Silva sisters, and they did a great job. Fair play to them.
Absolutely. Look at we will leave it there. That's the card as it. If Harry, look at it, we didn't talk too much about what's next. If you had a couple of names written down, maybe I'll leave it to you for the outro and saying who you would maybe like, you know, who would you want to see Sean O'Malley, Zhang Weili, and Ian Garry fight next in their respective divisions?
No stress. So for me, Aljamain Sterling fights fucking whoever, you know. I don't know whether Aljamain Sterling necessarily fights again. If they want to do the immediate rematch, I have no problem with that necessarily. Does Sean O'Malley want to do that? Probably. I think Sean O'Malley is the kind of guy that wants to really stamp his division and stamp his name on his division. It seems like the done thing now is you beat the champion and then you beat him again, right? So if that's what they want to do, fine, no problem. I know that this isn't necessarily the most logistical savvy fight, but I want to see Weili Zhang versus Valentina Shevchenko. Like, I just want to see it. I understand it may not be the right thing for the division, but fuck it, lads. Can we have some fun once in a while? I think we can. And for Ian Garry, the answer is Jeff Neal. Like, that to me is perfect matchmaking, because you will get the rhetoric of, oh, Wonderboy's 40, he's beating up an old man, he's doing this, he's doing that, whatever. Jeff Neal has got enough wins of good opponents in that division right now, and he doesn't have any worry about the takedown. And then I think it sets up in Dublin a Colby Covington, a Kamaru Usman, or depending on where he is, a Shavkat Rakhmonov. That's the fight.
Absolutely. We'll get all into those. I kind of feel like I could go for another half an hour after what you said there, but we'll wrap it up. BJJ_Harry Powell is where you'll find Harry Powell himself on social media, at Sean Sheehan
Yeah.
And he wants the followers now because he's earning in that Elon Musk cash based off those responses. Oh, did you? How much?
122 quid. Fucking, I'll take it.
Not too fucking shabby for the bit of abuse that you regularly get online.
Keep it coming. Everyone, I'm on blocking all these guns. Oh no!
At Sean Sheehan Bat is where you can go and send abuse to Sean Sheehan, where he'll earn money off that abuse. So I mean, that's a good deal for everybody, I think. And at O'Neill MMA is where you'll catch me. Head on over there and catch the Severe Spotlight for a detailed breakdown of Brad Katona's performance on SevereMMA.com. We'll see you for the preview show later on this week. Goodbye, good luck, and look after.